This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit TemptationsTreats.com to learn more.
But you know, happiness can be found even in the darkest of time. If one only remembers to turn on the light.
It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to your enemies, but a great deal more to stand up to your friends.
The ones that love us never really leave us.
Working hard is important, but there's something that matters, believing in yourself. If they can do it, why not us?
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We are covering Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. We have Elizabeth with us.
Hi everyone.
This is a little bit different.
Yeah.
This whole thing is going to be a little bit different. Obviously, not just the material, but the podcast has changed a little bit.
Our intro changed.
Our intro has changed. And since we're out of the books, we're not sticking to strictly book quotes anymore. We have delved into just some movie stuff. Mm-hmm. Why those quotes? Because going forward, these are going to be our intros for the foreseeable future. And we want to put out a positive vibe and a positive message. Because,
especially during these times,
yes.
And with everything relating to Harry Potter. I know there's a lot of controversy about the Harry Potter wizarding world in general. And I feel like we've always tried to be inclusive towards everyone and show love for everyone.
We are certainly trying to be a inclusive, welcoming, loving, and encouraging place.
Yeah.
I think what we loved most about the Harry Potter series is that idea of the outcast can be the hero. Mm-hmm. You look at characters like Harry, who lived in a cupboard until he was 11, and suddenly he's the main protagonist. Uh-huh. You get characters like Neville and like Luna, like Ron, who's the forgotten child in the Weasley family, who ends up becoming a prominent figure.
Even Hermione being outcasted by being smarter than her own good sometimes.
Or just a muggle-born.
Yeah.
So I think the series promotes a lot of love and friendship and the power that positivity can have. And I think that's what we wanted to encapsulate with the quotes that we have at the beginning and just put out that message of, hey, Harry Potter can be a place of love.
At least when we talk about it.
Hopefully. I know we have had our critiques of the series, and we will have continued critiques of the series, but the reasoning for the quotes at the beginning, and we wanted to acknowledge it specifically, is just because we want to put out a positive vibe into the world. We want to put out a positive vibe about Harry Potter and kind of illustrate what has made us all enjoy the series so much. So
very much so.
That's kind of why we have those quotes picked out. Again, like I said, the podcast has changed a little bit, especially with the material that we'll be covering. So we're covering Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, and we're going to go through the entire book, which essentially reads out as essentially a screenplay for the actual stage production.
Yeah.
So because it's a stage production and it reads as such, it's going to be a little tricky to kind of navigate.
Well, I mean, the play is broken down into 4 acts. Each act has its own number of scenes within it. Some are very, very short. Some are only like 2 pages long. Others are much longer than that. So I think we're going to try to break it up by various scenes. And if there seems like a good pausing spot, then that's what we'll read to.
So this is our first time, obviously, tackling this type of material. So bear with us as we try to break it up and try to break it down as best as we can. I know, Elizabeth, you've had some experience in your profession going over screenplays and dealing with some more theatrical.
I mean, I've had to teach Shakespeare repeatedly. That's a given. And we used to do, at my previous district, we used to read Death of a Salesman. And whenever you're reading screenplays or play productions in general, some of the things you have to consider is that it is dialogue based. You might get a little bit of stage direction. Usually the stage direction is in very short sentences. They're not very descriptive about what's actually happening, mostly because it's up to the director to really bring that vision to life. And they don't want to limit the director by just being very, 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 very specific with every detail. So when you read the books, the original 7, you're going to have these long paragraphs with a lot of description of the magic and you know, what's the emotions behind the character. Whereas here you might only have the hint of Hermione says something angrily, and that's it. You don't get a description of her body language or what else is going on around her. So it's really, it's up to your imagination a lot while you read screenplays. I'm intrigued by this challenge. I've never read The Cursed Child before. I've seen the play. We saw the play, actually. You'll get that reaction when we're done reading. But this is my first time reading The Cursed Child, so I'm interested to see how this goes.
Yeah, I picked up the book not exactly when it came out. There was some time after it originally came out, maybe a year or so. And I read the book at the time. Mm-hmm. So I had those initial preliminary thoughts of reading it. And then, like you said, we have seen the stage production. It'll be interesting to see. This is the first time I'm reading the book post stage production.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see now with the context of how it's supposed to be delivered in its original intended form. Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see how my opinion changes.
I'm interested because when it came out, I remember getting very excited and I bought the book, or I had someone buy it for me, maybe for like a birthday gift or something. And then I got it, and then I just could not bring myself to open it and read it. I just did not want to. And I think part of that is because I felt like the series wrapped up in such a satisfying way that I didn't want more, because I was afraid that it would spoil the magic of the original series. And I guess that's also kind of why I'm more hesitant about the epilogue of book 7, which I know, according to our poll, everyone disagrees with me. That's totally fine. I didn't need it. And I felt when I got this book, I was like, I actually don't need any more. And then I heard various plot points from it. People would tell me, and I was like, out of context, that sounds absolutely bizarre. I have no desire to read that and find out what is actually going on. So, yeah, I never read it, but seeing the play, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it's always important when judging a piece of art or literature to get the full context of the author's or artist's actual vision. Mm-hmm. I think that's really the whole idea of it. So it'll be interesting to see how, as we go through this, our thoughts and opinions will change or be more solidified. You said you weren't a big fan of the epilogue, and I think if anybody's listening that listened to our epilogue episode, they will agree with you. You did not like the epilogue.
Sorry if I came across really, really negative.
Unfortunately for you, this book, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, essentially begins
with the epilogue.
Yeah. So we will begin our discussion here of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child with Part 1, Act 1, Scene 1.
King's Cross.
It's at King's Cross. Harry is now 37 years old. Ginny, James, Albus, and Lily arrive at the station. James is teasing Albus about being in Slytherin, potentially. Albus is generally worried about his parents writing to him. Harry and Lily end up helping Albus's trolley through the barrier to platform 9 3/4. Ginny ends up helping James. So really, that's essentially straight out of the epilogue, minus the...
They're not on platform 9 3/4 yet. They're
That's
just
true.
still in the Muggle world.
That's true. So that's literally Act 1, Scene 1. And then we get right into Act 1, Scene 2, which is them on platform 9 3/4. Harry's family meets up with Ron and Hermione's family, specifically Rose. They don't mention Hugo at all here.
Yeah, I did notice that. I thought that was odd.
It is odd. So they run into Ron, Hermione, and Rose. Lily runs specifically to Uncle Ron. And Ron responds with, "If it isn't my favorite Potter."
Which I know is like being the goofy uncle, but at the same time, I like to think of it as a fun dig at Harry. And at Ginny, too, since she's now a Potter as well.
That's fair. Ron then does what universally referred to as a pretty lame trick with the nose.
Dad joke?
Yeah, it's very much a dad joke. Ron and Hermione end up discussing Ron's driving test, which we covered in the epilogue, and except the one detail of Rose adding in, I'm pretty sure you did have to confound the examiner.
Yeah, she's being a sassy little 11-year-old.
Yeah, that's a detail we didn't get in the epilogue.
No.
So we do know just very, very early on here in scenes that are firmly from the 7 books. We're getting a little bit of difference. Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting
It's giving
detail.
more for the kids to do. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Albus and Harry then discuss Albus's concerns with Slytherin. We do get the acknowledgement of Neville being a professor at Hogwarts. And then once the kids get onto the train, we get the trio reminiscing about Hogwarts.
What struck out to me that I thought was interesting, when Albus was asking Harry about being sorted into Slytherin, and Harry was like, "Oh yeah, that's perfectly fine. You know, the Sorting Hat will take into consideration whatever you want." He promised Albus that there's nothing to be frightened of at Hogwarts. I'm like, really? You can't think of a single thing that you could potentially be frightened of at Hogwarts? You had quite a few of them in your experience there.
He had a particularly active time at Hogwarts. There are certainly things, both inside and outside of the castle, to be cautious of. Let's say that.
I feel like, if anything, you should expect to be frightened of something while you're at Hogwarts. It's part of the experience.
He's just obviously trying to comfort his child. It's going to go away for the first time for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we forget, because obviously we didn't really get that with it. Harry was so overjoyed to get away from the Dursleys that we don't really truthfully understand what Ron might have went through. Being super comfortable at the Burrow, and now you're away from everything that was comfortable in your life.
And now we're getting the adult perspective of like, well, we're the parents. We have to release our children into Hogwarts and trust that they're going to take care of them, and we'll be sitting at home twiddling our thumbs, wondering how it's going this entire time, sending as many letters as possible to check in on them.
I think the parents are pretty busy, but yes, Ginny does acknowledge that. She's the first one to speak when it's just the parents, and she just says out loud, "Will they be okay?" Mm-hmm. And Hermione says, "It's a big place, so, there's..."
I thought that was an odd comment.
I think the comment is intended to describe that there's something there for everyone.
Okay, I can take it that way.
Is how I'm going to interpret it.
Okay.
So you can always find something there that interests you, that piques your interest, that catches your attention, that you're engaged with.
You'll find a friend.
I think is her intent.
Okay.
Ron says, yes, it's a big, wonderful, and full of food.
I love that he misses the food.
I would give anything to go back. Harry then notes Albus's worry about being in Slytherin.
He said he found it odd, which I find odd. Like, I don't understand why Harry would think it's weird for Albus to be worried about being sorted into Slytherin, because it's like, well, yeah, your kid is the kid of Harry Potter. He clearly feels some sort of pressure to be put into Gryffindor, especially since his mother was also in Gryffindor, and, his aunts and uncles were in Gryffindor, and his grandfather and grandmother were in Gryffindor. Like, it's a lot of pressure to be put onto a kid.
Yes. I think the difference is that Harry, and we can get into it a little later too, because we obviously get a lot more of Harry in these first couple of scenes. Mm-hmm. But I think the thing with Harry that's kind of like I hesitate to say the word fault in him because it's just who he is and how he has grown. Mm-hmm. That he's had to shield himself against such criticism and such speculation, and he's had eyes on him all the time, always. So he's kind of built in that mode of like, I don't care what other people think.
Yeah.
I'm doing what I'm doing
Yeah.
and forget everybody else. Which is fine for him, and that works well for him, and that's great.
That's what he needed to have to survive.
Not everybody else can do that, though.
Yeah.
So, and obviously Albus has grown up far differently from how Harry grew up. So they're inherently different people.
I do like that contrast. Like, I do think it makes sense for Albus to worry about being sorted into Slytherin. It is a lot of natural pressure that he would obviously be putting onto himself.
I think it's interesting that Harry notes this out loud.
Yeah.
Because for me, and I get Ron and Hermione are, for all intents and purposes, like his brother and sister. Mm-hmm. Like, they are family. Mm-hmm. I mean, now they're literally family. But, I mean, they've always been his
rock.
His rock, his foundation, his family.
Yeah.
So, like, I understand it. There probably are no secrets between the three of them. But when I read the epilogue and I got this sweet moment between him and Albus, I almost intended it to be like a
private moment.
A private moment between the two.
Yeah.
Where your son is sharing some of his, at that time, his like more dark thoughts of like, oh no.
Yeah, it's
like
a very deep fear.
His more anxious, fear-based thoughts. And Ginny we have there in the epilogue. And she's hearing it, but even she's not intruding on the moment. She's letting Harry deal with it.
And that was a moment I really did actually enjoy in the epilogue, because it did feel like I have put aside my wall of acting tough and cool, especially around James, and I'm letting you in on a very deep internalized secret that I'm afraid of. And Harry having this one-on-one moment of confidence and support is very powerful father-son kind of bonding. So yeah, you're right. Like, him now vocalizing that out loud seems almost like a
violation of trust.
Yeah.
I'm cool with him discussing it with Ginny.
Yeah.
Like,
that makes sense.
Because Ginny was there and she probably heard all of it.
But do it in the car ride home.
And there's like, obviously there's a family within a family. Mm-hmm. So I mean, like, they can keep that in-house. I get that it's not like a monumental, groundbreaking secret that's like,
right.
I mean, it's whatever.
But for an 11-year-old, that's a big deal to admit that you're scared.
I'm not hating on it. I don't love it. I'm just kind of like, oh, that's an interesting choice. I get it from Harry, because again,
and also we got to remember, because it is a play, you have to vocalize internal thoughts for the audience, because they can't read those internal thoughts in a paragraph.
That's true. This being a play, you can't also assume that your patrons have read the books, and especially haven't read the epilogue. Mm-hmm. So that's why I think you're getting these two scenes, and these are the foundations of the rest of the play and the rest of the book. So it's a good point to bring up that with this being a stage production, you do kind of have to state some of the obvious and let everybody know what
because in
the characters' motivations are.
The mantra you always say is show, don't tell. Here, sometimes you do have to tell instead of show. Because you got to make sure that the audience is where you need them to be in order to proceed with the rest of the story.
Well, the characters have to tell.
Yeah.
But
the showing is what you see on the stage. Yeah.
So it's harder reading the book because there's so much detail in the stage and what's going on in the environment that the characters are in that we're not clued into.
Right. I mean, you literally consider like where they are standing on the stage, how their body language is towards each other. Is it open? Is it closed? What tone do they say the lines in? There's so much that you don't get just by reading it.
Right. Which I think is an important detail as we read on.
Yeah.
So Hermione notes that, Albus's worry isn't really all that much. I mean, that's whatever. Hermione notes that Rose is worried if she'll break the Quidditch scoring record by year 1 or year 2. And she's also worried about when can she first take her OWLs.
I love that she wants to take them early. Like, why would we let you? Okay. I gotta say here, I'm fascinated by Rose early on here. Because this insight that we get into Rose that we didn't get in the epilogue, she intrigues me because she's like a cross between Hermione and Harry. Yeah.
Like, she has the academic side of Hermione.
Yeah.
But she seems to at least have the athletic tendencies of Ginny or Harry.
Yeah.
And I'm like, ooh, that's
which
kind
I guess
of an
you would
interesting
say
combo.
You're getting from Ron, because it's not like he didn't play on the Quidditch team, but he lacked the confidence.
He did play on the Quidditch team. Fred and George also played on the Quidditch team.
Yeah.
And Charlie also played on the Quidditch team.
So it does run in the family.
It does run in the family quite a bit. But it's just interesting that she's like the perfect combo.
She's like the perfect student because she's so smart academically and then so athletic.
Just say it, Elizabeth. She's like the one student we all hate.
She has too much going for her. We need some more character flaws.
She's too perfect. She can do the sports. She can do the academics. She's too perfect. We all hate her. We all hate Rose.
I will say one thing that...
We don't hate Rose.
No, we don't hate Rose. I will say one thing that I did note, and we see more of it in scene 3 and scene 4. If I remember correctly, in the epilogue, Rose as well as Albus were both kind of like not quaking in their boots, but you could tell they were visibly anxious about going to Hogwarts for their first year. And that was in part why James was strutting around being like, I know what we're going into. I know everything. Here it feels like Rose is so confident and Albus is the only one that is like really anxious about what's to come.
Yeah, I think you still get that note of...
It's more like excitement than anxiety from Rose.
Sure, but that could still be anxious.
Yeah.
It could just be a different tone to the anxious nature.
Yeah. And if we want to dig into the character psychology even further, it's interesting that both of them are having to live up to their parents' reputations.
I think at this point in their story, they're both just wanting to experience Hogwarts.
Yeah. They're
both just wanting to get there and experience kind of what their parents have probably reminisced about at home.
Forever.
Yeah. So I think they're both excited about what Hogwarts can be. Mm-hmm. Albus is just a little bit more nervous about the specific sorting.
Yeah.
But Ginny says to Harry, and this part makes perfect sense given what we've already just talked about. Ginny turns to Harry and says, what if Al isn't Slytherin? What happens? And I think she's poking at Harry in a way that only Ginny can, of like, I know what you said.
How will you react?
I know what you said, which was great.
Yeah.
But for real, between us, what do you think? Mm-hmm. Ron chips in with a really interesting comment. Ron says, Ginny, we always thought you would be in Slytherin. And Ginny's like, what are you talking about? And Ron goes, oh no, Fred and George had a book on it. Like, Fred and George had bets going that you would be the one to end up in Slytherin.
I love the idea of Fred and George being like the bookies of the Weasley family, making all these bets about stuff. I know, it's so funny to me.
What do you think about Ginny being the potential Slytherin?
I could see it. Being the only girl of the family, I could see her as being ambitious and cunning and setting herself apart in that way.
I see the ambitious and the cunning bits to her. Mm-hmm. I see her fiery nature as hard Gryffindor.
Yeah.
So I've always thought of her as a Gryffindor through and through.
Yeah.
I've never really considered any other house for Ginny.
It would really be interesting if the Sorting Hat had given them what their secondary house would be. Because I think that would...
Like what Harry got?
Yeah, because I feel like...
Or Hermione. Hermione was between Ravenclaw and Gryffindor.
Yeah, I feel like if that were given to them, it might increase the friendship between houses more. and have less of that intense rivalry that threatened to break apart Hogwarts. Because if you were like, okay, yeah, for me example, I am primarily Ravenclaw, but I know my secondary house is more like Slytherin, I think that I would be more prone to making Slytherin friendships because I would know that I share qualities with them.
I think that would be a crucial thing to build inter-house friendships. But yeah, I just thought it was a very interesting comment from Ron. And I think the purpose of it, like we're talking about a stage production, we're talking about, if things have to happen in a certain way. I think the intent of the comment is to open up the possibility of, Albus might actually end up in Slytherin. Yeah. I think it's a
lot of foreshadowing.
There's a window that's now been opened as to why Albus might end up being in Slytherin. It's like, Ginny, we kind of had a thought about you being there.
And I think it's also a nice, poke reminder about Fred and George. Because if you are seeing the play and you are someone who has read the whole series, you would want a little mention of the twins.
Before we get to a break here, I just want to have a thought, since we just basically ran through
the epilogue.
Essentially the epilogue. Before we get to new material in Act 1, Scene 3, I just wanted to have a little bit of a commentary on what we've just gone over. With it being essentially the epilogue, but there's been changes. There's been some slight ones. I'll give you that. It's been slight. It's just a couple of added details here and there.
I think you'd only notice if you were someone who had read the epilogue a million times.
Right. And obviously we just covered it. Yeah. So that's fair. But in a world in what we live in nowadays, with multiverses and Elseworld stuff, with there being slight differences, and I know there's been controversy amongst the Harry Potter fandom of, is this
canon or
Harry
not?
Potter and the Cursed Child, is it canon or is it not?
Yeah. I
believe technically she has come out and said it is.
I think because she was involved in the writing process.
It says, here's the full description on the book. Harry Potter and the Cursed Child Parts 1 and 2, based on an original new story by J.K. So she's on the record as saying, this is canon.
Right.
This is legit. For all you Harry Potter fans that don't love that so much, if you want to have your own headcanon, I honestly think these first two scenes give you an out of being like, hey, it's a little bit different than something that's actually been in the 7 books.
Yeah.
So maybe it gives you a little bit of an avenue, if you wanted, in your own headcanon, to be like, maybe it's just an alternative Harry Potter story that doesn't have to happen in what you had imagined before this book came out.
Yeah, I did have that thought as I was reading it, and I think I am going to be one of those fans who are like, not canon, different side story, just with the names of characters that I have loved. Because you're right, it does give you that out, which I'm glad that they did, because it does get very odd.
I also am not going to have this in my personal headcanon. That being said,
it is interesting to read.
Here's where I differ from you in the epilogue and this book in general, at least going in, is I love Harry Potter. Obviously, I'm the host of a podcast. Obviously, I love Harry Potter. So if you make content that is Harry Potter related,
you're going to consume it.
Give it to me. I will take it in, and yeah, I'm going to have my judgments. Do I like it? Do I not? Why? Whatever. That's fine. But I want it. I want that content. I want the Wizarding World. Give me all those little side nuggets of information. I will take it. So I'm here for it. It'll be interesting on how we interpret everything going forward.
Yeah.
Here. But we'll take a little break. Enjoy this new break sound, and we will be right back. Before we get to our break sound, I'd like to acknowledge our friend Andy, who helps us produce our intros and our break sounds. If you want to hear more of Andy's work and like Formula One racing, check out the Outlap F1 podcast. It's your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. You can find them wherever you listen to podcasts, and they even have a YouTube page. So check out Andy, Cody, John, James, and Deanna, and join them on the Outlap.
Imagine this. The best pasta sauce you have ever tasted sits abandoned on a plate. Wasted sauce. That is a tragedy. If only you had used Barilla al Bronzo pasta. Its bronze-cut texture holds your sauce and scoops up every last drop. The Italians call that scarpetta. Capture sauce the Italian way. Barilla al Bronzo. Click or tap the banner to find out more.
All right, we are back with part 2 of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. We're moving into Act 1, Scene 3 now. And if you noticed, the break sound was Harry saying, "I love magic." And I again, going back to the quotes at the beginning, setting that stage for just positivity about it. So that scene is specifically him walking into the tent at the Quidditch World Cup in Goblet of Fire, which obviously that tent is a tent that he spends a whole lot of time in. But he walks into the tent and he sees the entire Weasley family walk into this seemingly just normal tent.
Yeah, like a clown car.
What is this thing that I'm about to walk into? And then he walks into it and it's essentially like a mansion. I would consider it a mansion. That is glamping.
Yes.
And that's when he says, "I love magic."
Yeah.
And it's a great scene. And that kind of creates a lot of that wonder around the wizarding world of Harry Potter. But anyway, we'll continue with Act 1, Scene 3.
Well, now they're officially on the Hogwarts Express.
Yes, this is where we have actual new material. So we don't have any context for this going forward. This is brand new stuff. And we are on the Hogwarts Express, and Rose and Albus are searching the train for a compartment and potential new friends.
Rose is very confident with this. I mean, she basically told Albus that people will be lining up to become their friends just based on who their parents are, and they have like the pick of the litter, and they should rate every single compartment before making a big decision of who will be our future friends. Like, geez, girl, bit conceited there.
Well,
she's not wrong, but
it comes from a couple of things. So she points out the fact that her parents met Harry Potter on the first Hogwarts Express train.
Right. Like, this is the moment that defined them. So this is our moment to define ourselves.
Right. Which is a lot of pressure to put on yourself.
Yes.
Which Albus points out is like, so I have to find my forever friend like right now? That is a lot.
Yes.
But I think it's also indicative of her mother's personality.
Yeah.
Her mother is, especially at that same age of 11.
Follow the rules. This is how it goes.
It's like she is driven. She is motivated. She's all business. And she also was popping in compartments. And she was also a little judgy of the people in those compartments because she was a little judgy of Ron.
And she very much, like Hermione, seems to think like there's a timeline for how things go. And you follow the timeline. That's the formula for success. And we saw that it worked for our parents, so we need to follow the same pattern.
Yeah, she's definitely overbearing here a little bit, but I do think that is her mom coming out in her a little bit. So I think it tracks. And Albus is a little like, whoa, this is a lot. Which is also the Ron and Harry, parts of him where it's just like, whoa, this is... You need to chill.
We don't have to determine our futures at 11 years old.
You can chill out. You can take it down a couple of notches. But Albus ends up opening a door to one of the compartments, and he finds Scorpius sitting alone. Scorpius, very eager to have people pop into his compartment, offers them sweets and even sings.
Sweets, they always help you make friends.
And then an awkward silence.
As there should be.
And Scorpius realizes that singing that was a poor choice.
They were really awkward with introducing each other anyway. Like, Albus kind of... Didn't he call himself Al first? And then he changed his mind. He's like, no, I'm Albus. And Scorpius introduced himself as Albus. And he was like, no, wait, you're Albus. I'm Scorpius. And Rose is just sitting there like, this is so uncomfortable and I don't like this. And her face gets colder, they said, colder by the minute, just listening to them talk to each other.
Albus seems very eager to indulge in Scorpius's sweets and have a conversation with this new individual. Rose, however, is not so enthusiastic once she hears the name Scorpius.
Well, Albus said part of the reason why sweets work so well on him is because Ginny doesn't let them have candy.
That's true. We do have an insight to Ginny as a mother, which is interesting. How many sweets do you think Harry is pocketing? And
he's being like Dudley.
Kind of, probably. Rose is not very enthusiastic about Scorpius. Scorpius immediately realizes why. Albus equals a Potter. Rose equals a Granger Weasley, which we can get to in a second. And Scorpius equals a Malfoy. Mm-hmm. He is the son of Draco and Astoria. Can we just double back? It's interesting that Hermione and Ron went with the hyphenated
Oh, it doesn't surprise me at
last
all.
name. It's very interesting.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
I'm not against it. It's just an interesting little detail of ooh, okay.
I mean, knowing how Hermione felt the pride of being a quote-unquote mudblood, she would want to incorporate her last name, and she's a very strong female character who believes in her own self-independence and such, so I could absolutely see her wanting to include Granger. I thought it was interesting that Scorpius immediately says, our parents did not get along with each other, because that tells me that Draco has also mentioned several times that him and the Potter, Weasley, Hermione, Granger clan have not gotten along.
I think so this is, again, 19 years later. Uh-huh. History happens fast. And 19 years that's a decent chunk of time. That's almost 2 decades. Mm-hmm. So following the events of the Battle of Hogwarts, I imagine there were annals of wizarding history written about those times. So, yeah, their parents' relationships are probably very well documented. And obviously, we'll get to it, but obviously Draco is a Death Eater. He was a Death Eater. So, yeah, that just detail alone picks sides.
It'd be really funny to me if Albus, similar to Harry, did not read up on his family history prior to going to Hogwarts. Remember Hermione was like, if it were me, I would have read all about it. I know all about you. And Harry's like, I'm in history books.
To be fair, he didn't have access to it. Yeah. So Rose accuses Scorpius's parents of being Death Eaters, and Scorpius does correct him. Hey, look, my dad was. Mm-hmm. My mom was not.
I think that's smart of him to own it.
I mean, you can't
deny it, but yeah. Also to be like, yes, I have. He also said too, I have issues with my father. So it is, which is a whole other interesting thing of Draco always being like, my father will hear about this, and here Scorpius is like, yeah, my father and I. But no, I think it was good for him to just immediately own up to, yes, my parent did this, and I'm ashamed of it.
He is also quick to say that my mother was not, which I think is an important detail that if Jen were here, she would latch on to, because that indicates not every Slytherin was a Death Eater. And we also made that acknowledgement at the Battle of Hogwarts when apparently everybody was labeled a Death Eater. Mm-hmm. That's impossible. Mm-hmm. They weren't all Death Eaters. Not all of them had the Dark Mark. Very few of them did. So the idea that everybody was a Death Eater, I'm hoping in the years later, got sorted out. And they were, not that they weren't criminals or they did bad things, but there's a certain level tier change.
Right, of punishment.
Right.
Yeah.
So it is important that Scorpius makes that correction. However, Scorpius recounts a rumor that has been circulating. The rumor is that the Malfoys sent his mother back in time to have a child with Voldy. Scorpius being that child. The idea behind it being that Draco and his mother could not have a child.
Right, but they wanted to continue on the Malfoy line.
Correct.
I read that and I literally had to stop because I was like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And then when I read it, I was like, the only way I can process this is to read it as Rita Skeeter wrote up an article trying to stir up gossip which I could see have happened. When you think about it logically, when you think about the way that Voldemort's goal was to live forever, so often I think people, when they do have children, their thought is, I am going to continue on my legacy through that child. If Voldemort's goal was to live forever, having a child to increase his legacy, if anything, the child would just get in the way of that.
I agree with you. It's kind of a ridiculous notion because it reads as a soap opera
Yeah.
of just like such crazy events that would need to take place. Like, I also agree with you that it does sound a little bit like Rita Skeeter writing of just sensationalism.
Which I could easily see after Voldemort was killed, because people would have fear still running through them, and it'd be... people take advantage of those type of situations.
It would be a way to foster a potential return of the Dark Lord, which no one would want, but people would read about.
Yeah.
So
Gossip sells.
And then that rumor would spread. So, like, I understand the nature of it for sure. It's just, it is a little over the top, but it worked. Again, it's a play. So, I mean, it works well for the structure of the play, but me personally, being the Ravenclaw side of this, I'd be like, this seems a little out there. But if I'm just some random person in the wizarding world that picks up this rumor that knows of how dangerous Voldy was, the idea might hit.
Yeah.
And might take hold if you're just a regular person in the world.
And it shows a lot about Scorpius that he immediately addresses it, too. Because the entire conversation he's having with Albus, Rose keeps hitting Albus to be like, come on, like, let's get out of here. We shouldn't be here. Come on. And Scorpius obviously sees that and is like, yeah, this is why she's reacking this way. Let's just bring the elephant into the open here.
Rose does come in with a little humor. She says, well, clearly that rumor can't be true because you have a nose and Voldy doesn't have one.
Yeah.
Which was funny. And even Scorpius was like, all right, that's funny.
Yeah.
And Scorpius does build on that with like, that's not it. I also have my father's nose. I have my father's hair and his last name. Unfortunately, but it's still better than Voldy.
And that's where him and Albus look at each other like, oh, yeah, we both have issues with our dads. Bonding.
So I think it's really interesting on a couple of levels here. I fully respect Scorpius for taking a hold of the narrative.
Yeah.
And not letting Rose shape the conversation. He's like, wait, before you even start, it's like the Eminem in 8 Mile. Like rap battle at the end. He's like, before you get to say all this negative stuff about me, let me just air it out here first. Let me beat you to the punch here. Here's all my dirty laundry.
Yeah.
Now what do you have to say against it?
Yeah.
And Rose can't, and that's when she makes a joke.
Yeah.
It's a bold move by Scorpius that I actually respect quite a lot.
That all said, though, Rose still does not want to stay in the compartment.
Before we get too far,
Okay.
Scorpius said he has his father's nose, his father's hair, and the last name, unfortunately. Do you think he also has gotten the Lucius Malfoy hair care routine? Has that also been passed down the Malfoy line?
Maybe he's born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline. I hope he has the luscious locks.
These are the details that we need to focus on.
The Malfoys take hair care very seriously.
That's what I'm saying.
Rose, despite all this, does still want to sit elsewhere. And when I was reading it, I had the question I wanted to pose to you. I have some thoughts about it. Do you think this judgmental side that Rose is displaying, is it more Ron coming through or Hermione coming through?
Ron.
In what way?
He didn't say it in this version of the epilogue. Mm-hmm. But in the, for lack of a better phrasing of it, the actual epilogue.
Yeah.
Ron does poke at a potential rivalry between Rose and Scorpius. Mm-hmm. And he does poke at, you better beat him at every test. And you better do X, Y, and Z or whatever.
Don't marry a pureblood.
And don't marry a pure... Yes.
Yeah.
You know, Granddad Weasley would be super disappointed if you married a pureblood. So this type of viewpoint reeks of Ron's influence. And I think that's part of what we see in Rose so far early on. For better or for worse, we see her in this Hogwarts Express scene displaying characteristics of both of her parents. Why I don't see it as Hermione in this circumstance is I view Hermione as a more diplomatic individual who might have her issues with Draco, but I think is mature enough, emotionally mature enough, to put a lot of that to the side and deal with him as a human being and not all the extra baggage that they have in the past. Ron clearly does not, because of what we've seen in the actual epilogue.
I had similar thoughts. I agree about Ron being very vocal about Draco and his son and anti-Slytherin. I did have a thought, though, for Hermione. Hermione is so ambitious, and Rose has already been hinted at as being even more ambitious than Hermione. And I could see it as her not wanting some sullied reputation holding her back from achieving this greatness. So if she sees that Scorpius has this horrible rumor about him and everyone knows it from the get-go, I could see her being like, yeah, that's not a friend that I want to make because this kid could hold me back. But I agree, definitely more Ron.
This screams more Ron to me than Hermione, but I see where you're going with it. So with that, Albus ends up choosing to stay in Scorpius's cabin. Rose decides to move on to another cabin.
Okay, so I get that Rose is not her parents, but it seems like at this age, so many kids, their opinions of people are formed by the observations they have of their parents, and their characters are formed from the characters of their parents. And it felt to me like this was odd for Rose to be so judgmental of people because, like I've already said, her going into her first year in the epilogue, it seemed like she was very unsure about herself and anxious. I wouldn't see her as being confident enough to go off and leave her cousin behind. And if she does know the background of how her parents met Harry at this moment, and it was so important to their friendship, and she would know that Harry was an outcast at the time, I would see her as following in Ron's footsteps more if she were to reach a hand of friendship out to Scorpius. But instead, she's just like, you know, super cold and awkward about it. And it just seems so out of character for Rose to be having this negativity towards a seeming outcast.
I think you're being a touch harsh, if I'm honest.
Okay.
Because it's an 11-year-old kid. And kids have sometimes a very black and white view
That's true.
of the world.
That's true.
They don't understand nuance as well. They don't understand that there are shades of gray between the black and white, and that, you know, they can't grasp the idea that because you have a last name, that does not make you
one way or the other
your father or your mother or whoever else. Like, you can be different and you can have differences. I just purely think she's just being an 11-year-old who wants to be popular, and I would press you to find me a kid that doesn't want to fit in.
True.
With a good crowd that you like and respect and have common similarities with.
That's certainly fair. It just struck me as so odd that, like, of what we know of Ron and Hermione, Hermione certainly balances out the comments that Ron makes that could be interpreted as more negative. And Hermione has been less judgmental and more accepting of people. And through being around Hermione, Ron has also grown in that sense. So it just struck me as odd that Rose is just like, I'm out of here.
I remember being that young and having very vain, shallow thoughts on what friends should or could be. And obviously that has grown as I've matured and realized what actual friends really are, not what the idea of friends are.
Yeah.
So I don't fault her at all. So We now transition to Act 1, Scene 4, which is a transition. We get a bunch of scenes. They hit pretty rapidly. They're very quick, and it's a long bunch of scenes.
I honestly think it made more sense reading it than it did seeing it at first. Because I didn't expect it when I saw it on the stage.
I honestly was good with either. I thought it played out better on stage because you could visually tell what's going on. Here, you might have to read it once or twice to get the because not only is this a transitionary bunch of scenes that blur from one scene to the other, we're spanning years in this transition.
And I think that's why it confused me when I saw it on the stage. I didn't realize that it was going from year to year to year. Whereas this, reading it made it more clear to me.
So we start out, the first scene, or first fragment of a scene, begins in the Great Hall. Albus, very popular, just like Rose had predicted on the train. Like, hey, people are going to come up to us because we have the last name that's important. Well, she was right. Albus is very popular. He has Polly Chapman introduce herself. Carl Jenkins, who's blown away that they have a Potter in their year. Jan Fredericks, who I feel like has a very odd comment of, ooh, he's got his hair. Just like him. Which I'm like, why can't you just say, wow, he really looks like him? You have to really comment on the hair specifically.
See, I would have laughed more if it was a comment about his eyes, given how much grief Harry heard throughout his years about Lily's eyes.
That would have been funny too.
Now he's getting James's hair.
Yeah. So Rose, maybe feeling a little jealous about all the attention that Albus is getting, pops in and introduces herself as Albus's cousin.
Yeah. To be fair, she should also be famous. She has famous parents.
Very much so, yeah.
So
we do get the sorting ceremony, which reads odd.
Well, because the sorting hat is portrayed by a human. If I remember correctly, they were like placing their hands over the characters' heads and then being like, "You're in Gryffindor," or something like that, which I thought was an interesting way to...
It's not what we're used to with literally a line of kids, the house table's all set up, and you're just going to a stool that...
And putting on a hat.
Right.
Yeah.
This reads a little differently than that.
But I thought in terms of like maneuvering the magic that would be next to impossible to do on the stage, I thought that was a kind of cool way to do it.
So as per tradition, we get a sorting hat poem or song, however you want to categorize it. And I will read the sorting hat's
You don't want to sing it?
No, this is poem. The sorting hat says, I've done this job for centuries. On every student's head I've sat. Of thoughts I take in inventories, for I'm the famous sorting hat. I've sorted high, I've sorted low. I've done the job through thick and thin. So put me on and you will know which house you should be in. And then he calls Rose Granger Weasley, who lands in Gryffindor. And I think Rose's response is quite interesting.
I made note of it too.
She says, thank Dumbledore.
I thought that was interesting on so many levels.
Thank Dumbledore that I'm in Gryffindor.
So many levels. I mean, first of all, if it was in the Muggle sense, you'd be saying thank God. So we're putting Dumbledore on this godlike pedestal.
Do you think Dumbledore has replaced Merlin? Because usually they use...
That was another comment I was going to say. Because usually it was always like, oh, by Merlin's beard or whatever.
Merlin's pants.
Yeah, or that too. And I'm like, that's interesting to think that Dumbledore would replace him.
This strikes me as one of two things. One, just generally in the pop culture part of the wizarding world, Dumbledore has now like elevated to a realm that is like what Merlin was, where he now becomes like an exclamation. Or he's now become this use of school slang, where instead of words that we've already said on this podcast a time or two that I've been told I can't say anymore, but like Riz.
Yes, you proceed to say them.
Like stuff like that. It's just this now. It's this younger slang that's coming up almost that they just changed the popular vernacular. So those are the two indications that I get from it. Is it's either his name has literally been this now movement in pop culture in the wizarding world at this time over the last 19 years or so, or it's a version of younger slang taking over and they're just using the name as
Yeah, I would probably lean more towards he's become higher than a man. He's like more of a legend,
pop culture
myth.
icon.
Yeah.
So we continue with the sorting. Scorpius is in Slytherin, which Polly notes is that makes sense.
I love everyone just be like, "Oh yeah, we agree.
Yeah,
we got that.
That's
Yep,
good.
Yep.
That's good. Yep, that's good." Albus Severus Potter. After a very long wait, which is interesting, he ends up in Slytherin. Polly, after a profound silence that falls on the Great Hall, asks, "Slytherin?" Craig Bowker Jr. says, "Whoa, a Potter in Slytherin." And Jan, the guy who likes the hair, says, I guess his hair isn't really that similar after all.
And Rose is like, that wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah. So what do we think of Albus being sorted into Slytherin?
I think it's an interesting way to take the plot, and I like it for that reason. To complicate Albus's time at Hogwarts, having him be in a house that is so anti-Gryffindor, at least that's what it seemed like in Harry's years. It's cool to see him have to tackle that challenge. There are also ways I don't like it, which I'll get to more as we go through the scene. But for now, I think as the playwrights, like in terms of making the choice of how do you complicate this character's time at Hogwarts, yeah, I think it works well.
Obviously, as I said earlier, I think Ron foreshadows this by saying, "Hey, Ginny, you." So I think they open that door just a crack. With the long pause of the sorting hat on Albus, it makes me think that the hat really wanted to sort him into Gryffindor. And he, in his time with the hat, as it's having this like internal conversation with you, after his conversations with Scorpius on the Hogwarts Express, just like Harry had his interaction with Draco right before the sorting ceremony, I think it changed his perspective. And where Harry went, not with him. I don't want to be with that guy. Don't put me in Slytherin. I think Albus said exactly the opposite. Please put me with him. I need to be with him.
I could absolutely see that, but there are other reasons why I disagree and why this scene is odd to me. But we can come back to that after seeing more of Albus's time in Hogwarts.
Harry also foreshadows it by saying, if you're in doubt, you can ask the hat where you want to be. He also foreshadows the idea of a choice being made.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm kind of leaning towards, I think
he chose to be there.
I think the hat wanted Gryffindor. And Albus was like, no, I need to be here. And I think that's the conversation that was had. That's just my opinion. Let me know
like I said, once we see more of him at Hogwarts, I'll tell you my thoughts more in depth.
Well, the next time we see Albus is a flying lesson with Madam Hooch, who is still present at Hogwarts.
Still only teaching flying, apparently. I don't know what else she does during her days.
She also officiates Quidditch. And
Quidditch matches aren't happening every day, though.
Sure, but the practices are. She's still overseeing all of that.
Maybe.
She's not just like showing up once for like an hour.
Hey, if she did, she'd be getting that paycheck. Also, I'd be all for it.
Is it just first years? Or if you're like a 7th year taking an elective and you're like, I haven't really gotten this hang of flying yet. Can I give it a go again?
That is true. I mean, other than their first year of flying, if they're not playing Quidditch, how much flying are they actually doing?
Right. So can you take it as an elective later and just be like, hey, can I
Advanced
double back
flying
on this? Can I do a class on Quidditch? Like, is she just like the PE teacher? I mean, she is, but like...
Yeah, maybe Harry gets exempt from PE because he's on the Quidditch team.
I don't know. I just wonder, like, Hooch probably does do more teaching.
It is a very crucial skill to be in the wizarding world, and we know, like, Hermione struggles with it. So, yeah, you would think that there'd be more practice. It'd be like...
Or at least the option to...
Yeah.
Do more study with it.
Because if you're the Muggle-born, you're not, like, doing it at home.
Also, does she just teach an elective on brooms themselves? Like, wands have specific wood.
Yeah.
Like, brooms, maybe specific wood.
It'd be like taking an auto class in high school.
Like, I wonder how different you can make that class. But anyway, we get a flying lesson specifically with first years. Rose and Jan have their brooms come to them immediately once they say the infamously famous words of
up.
Albus, however, struggles. And he doesn't have his broom move at all. I believe they even say, not even a millimeter. Like, this thing stays resolutely on the ground. Polly says, oh, wow, he really isn't like his father at all. Because they know his Quidditch accomplishments just as well as his dueling accomplishments, let's say.
I mean, he was the youngest Seeker in a century.
Which, that's a harsh thing for Polly to say, because that puts Albus on blast. But what Carl says, I think, is particularly rough. Albus, the Slytherin squib. Yeah. That's harsh.
It's a rough reputation for Albus to be competing with. I mean, if Harry, I know we talked about this way back in book 1, but Harry to so naturally pick up flying and Quidditch without any prior practice, it was like, whoa, here's an element of magic that comes naturally to me. Cool. I know that I'm getting that from James. I'm so connected with my father. And here for the exact opposite to be happening, yeah, it's a big reminder to him, especially after being sorted into Slytherin, that like, yes, I'm a Potter, but am I a Potter? Do I belong with the Potters? I don't really know.
I think we're seeing the difference of how anxiety can affect a person.
Right, because didn't Madam Hooch say, like, the brooms can sense your anxiety?
Well,
I mean, we know animals can in general. Yeah.
Magic.
Yeah.
Just magic in general.
Yeah.
How your temperament is, how you're feeling, your assertion does affect your magic. Mm-hmm. You have to want to do the magic. You have to really feel that magic to do it properly or to its fullest extent. Yeah. So I think we're seeing anxiety hamper Albus's abilities here. But also, we're focusing a lot on Albus because obviously this is primarily focused on Albus. And we're saying how tough this must be for Albus. Mm-hmm. Oh man, everybody's coming up to me being like, your dad's Harry Potter. Your dad's Harry Potter. Hey, did you know your dad's Harry Potter?
Someone tell me again, because I forgot.
James went first.
Yeah.
How tough must it have been for James to be the first one to walk into that school since Harry Potter?
That's another reason why I'm kind of about this so far, because Albus acts like he's the first child to have to go against Harry's reputation, and he's not.
Going back to what I just said, I think it's you see how anxiety can affect a person. James doesn't seem to be weighed down by the same things that Albus is. Mm. James seems a little bit more carefree. He seems a little bit more charismatic, a little bit more sociable. Mm-hmm. And he utilizes that, much like his namesake, like James and Sirius probably do, or probably did when they were at Hogwarts. Mm-hmm. Albus doesn't have that same charisma. He doesn't have that same energy. And I think that's the real difference between the two.
Well, we definitely see that he starts to internalize it because the next transition goes to their second year at Hogwarts on the platform again. And he's like, Dad, stand away from me. People are looking at me. And Harry's like, oh, what? Second years are too cool to stand next to their dads? Ha ha, joking, trying to cover up the awkwardness. And Albus is like, no, people are looking at us and they see me as a Slytherin and an embarrassment to my father, and it makes me uncomfortable.
He specifically says the words, everyone is looking at Harry and his disappointing son.
Right. Which Harry does something that I do not like. Harry stops to sign an autograph for a fan, and I think that is so completely out of character. I could not see Harry Potter as putting a fan asking for an autograph above his own flesh and blood, clearly going through a rough time right now. Ever. So that to me was a weird choice for them to make. I get that the idea is to be like Albus feels more disconnected from his father, but I was like, that is such a bizarre thing to have Harry do.
I don't know that Harry knows how to deal with this very well. And obviously he's not a new father, because obviously he had James first, but Harry's always never handled fame well. And he would much rather, similar to Albus, just like to be left alone and just do his own thing.
Yeah, but I knowing how Harry has always rejected autographs or pictures or whatever when he has something more important to be worrying about, like his friendships or in this case his family.
That's true. However, as we saw at the end of book 7, his role has now changed. Mm-hmm. Just like Dumbledore has now become this pop culture icon. Mm-hmm. You thought Harry was famous before. Harry took on a whole other level of stardom after the Battle of Hogwarts. And he acknowledged it himself when he was like,
well, comforting people.
I have to be the face of this now.
Yeah.
I apologize for bringing this up. But what Rufus wanted to make him... Rufus wanted to make him the face of everything.
So you're saying he essentially became that regardless?
He ultimately becomes the face of it. And he takes on that responsibility of now I have to go talk to these people. Now I have to do this.
I don't disagree. It just strikes me as such an odd thing, though, because I don't think... It's poor timing. It's poor timing, and I don't think Harry Potter would ever put dealing with a fan above his son. Again, I think it's mostly a device to show how there's starting to be more separation from father and son.
James comes in and says, Slytherin, stop with your dithering. Mm-hmm. Time to get on the train. So James pokes at it, and then I actually love Harry's response here. I imagine Harry just standing there, just a deadpan facial expression, just going, unnecessary.
Yes.
Yes. Just... I love the response.
James, get out of here. I'm dealing with your brother right now. Okay, so I didn't like Harry with the parenting of signing the fan first, the fan autograph first. This bit I do like. Well, first he called Albus Al, which Albus corrected him. He said, my name is Albus, not Al. So, okay, I could see that as a natural. I'm growing up and I don't want your nickname anymore.
You're finding out who you are.
I'm finding who I am. Harry said, clearly Hogwarts is a little more rough for you than it was for me, at least in terms of surviving it. Do you need more friends to survive? I really would not have gotten through without Ron and Hermione. And I like him saying that because it shows I had a struggle too. And I get how it's hard to get through school if you do not have friends. What I don't like is Albus's response. He said how he has Scorpius and he knows Harry doesn't like him. And Harry's literally he says, quote, as long as you're happy, that's all that matters to me. And Albus doesn't address that comment at all. He just completely skates over it and says how, Harry didn't need to bring him to the train station, basically implying you're embarrassing me. I don't need you here. I'm like, okay, first of all, child, you are a child. You are 12 years old. No parent is going to let a 12-year-old go to the train station, especially when his older brother also clearly needs supervision because he's going to get into trouble otherwise. So yes, he needs to bring you to the train station. But also this felt like a very forced father-son butting heads situation. And it made me think about the Percy-Arthur argument that we saw, which to me felt more natural. Like it was within Percy's character to be ambitious and to want to rise in the ministry. And it was in Arthur's character to want to fight for justice and what's right and be on Team Dumbledore. And since both characters felt like they were in the right, that's why them butting heads so much felt so heartbreaking to us. Whereas here, Harry is literally telling his son, I don't care who you're friends with, be with friends because friends are important. They will help you survive your schooling. And Albus is just completely ignoring everything that Harry tells him because he's so focused on what everyone else is potentially saying about him or what he believes everyone else is saying about him. And it's like, Harry does not care. He wants you to have friends. Stop butting heads with your father. And I get that if you're going to raise the drama of the play and to widen the rift between the two, you have to do this. But it just seems so forced to me, and I don't like it.
I disagree.
Okay, tell me why.
I actually think this has nothing to do with the fact that it's a stage production and you're trying to ramp up drama. Mm-hmm. I actually view this as a very real, lifelike issue between a child and a parent. As the child is growing up and finding out who they are as a human being, like, hey, I want to be called Albus, not Al. Mm-hmm. Okay. They're setting boundaries. They're realizing what they're comfortable with. They're growing. Mm-hmm. And again, I just view it as a very real depiction of, I think every kid has butted heads with their parent over, the parent's trying to do good. The parent is trying to be there for their kid. The kid just views it as annoying and overstepping. I don't know that there's a right or wrong there. I just think it's two people with two different points of view that are butting heads because one is seeing it from their perspective, which is, I've been there, I've gone through this, listen to me, I will help you through this. And the other is like, I don't need your help, I'm just trying to get through the day. Like, leave me alone, I know what's best for me.
I agree with all that, but I guess where I'm like, it doesn't make sense is because Harry literally says, I don't care who you're friends with. I'm happy you've made a friend.
I get that. But again, my own personal experience has been, I have, at younger ages, told my parents, like, you're wrong, I'm right.
Even when they're agreeing with you?
Well, they're not necessarily.
Harry's agreeing. He says, I want you to be friends with somebody.
I understand that. But when you're caught up there as a 12-year-old, that's not what you're hearing. You're not hearing the truth in what your parents are saying. You're just against them. And I think that's a natural development in a person's life, is you can get advice from older, wiser individuals who have done this. And you can choose to perfectly ignore it. And I think that's what I just think it's a very natural thing for a 12-year-old to do.
I agree that 12-year-olds certainly go against their parents, and literally their brain stage in terms of development is, I need to disagree with you, I need to fight with you because I'm solving my own path and whatever. It just so strikes me as him creating his own issues and taking it out on Harry as, I have been bullied for being a Slytherin because I'm a Potter and I'm supposed to be in Gryffindor.
You don't understand me.
You don't understand me because this is what's happened to me and my life is so hard because I'm in Slytherin. Which, to go back then to the Sorting Hat stuff, this is where I kind of struggle with that scene because we know the Sorting Hat, like you said, it lets you choose where to be. And it seems like so much of this play has Albus despising being in Slytherin. And it seems like
I don't get that.
To me, it strikes me as he's like, my life would be better if I wasn't in Slytherin, because then people wouldn't judge me the way that they're judging me. They wouldn't bully me the way they're bullying me. They wouldn't compare me to my father. And if we think of the Sorting Hat the way that we've always thought of the Sorting Hat, of knowing where to best place a child, I would think that the Sorting Hat would have sensed that Albus would reject Slytherin really, really badly, and that he'd have a harder time through Hogwarts as a result, and I think it wouldn't have put him in Slytherin if that were the case.
I think we're jumping the gun a little bit on the Slytherin conversation. I think Harry is left here after this experience with Albus, just left wondering, what am I going to do here? There's obviously something I need to do. I just don't have all the answers, which, again, I also think I think it's a realistic portrayal of parents sometimes, where, you don't have all the answers all the time.
Yeah.
And you are worried for your child, and you're trying to figure out the best way to accommodate them.
Which is hard to do when your child seems to reject your advice and your help.
Which is a natural child reaction. Speaking of parents struggling with their children, Draco appears next to Harry on this platform, and Draco needs a favor. Draco says, I need a statement from the Ministry that all time turners were destroyed in the Battle of the Department of Mysteries. So obviously indicating that Harry has some pull with the Ministry of Magic. And Harry says, whatever, it'll blow over.
Which feels in character to me, only because Harry had to deal with so many rumors throughout his career in Hogwarts, and he knows that if you address rumors, sometimes it only makes the rumors worse.
It's a little dismissive from Harry.
He didn't outright refuse, though.
You're not wrong in that it's in character, because he's obviously dealt with a lot of gossip and rumors and stuff. A little dismissive, which Draco acknowledges, and he's like, look, my son is suffering here. He's struggling. And my wife, Astoria, is not doing well. I need a better way to support my son. I think this is a genuine moment between Draco and Harry. I need your help here.
No, I like this scene because, as Jen has said repeatedly, we've wanted some kind of redemption arc from Draco. And I do think Draco talking to Harry and not having to do some awkward, haven't talked to you in 19 years, but I need a favor, to me indicates that they have had conversations, and having children have made them mature as adults and in their relationship with each other.
Harry at least having this conversation shows that he's at least on a casual acquaintance level with Draco, where it's not an uncommon occurrence to have a conversation with Draco Malfoy.
Right. They're not pulling out their wands and threatening to duel each other anymore.
Yeah. Harry responds with, well, you can't feed the gossip by trying to put out a story every time something comes up. There have been rumors that Voldy's had a child for years, which on one hand, I guess strengthens Harry's point, and on the other hand, hurts Harry's own point, because if the rumor's been there for years, clearly it's not blowing over. So maybe the Ministry should try to nip this in the bud and try to hey, look, at least this one rumor we can firmly kill.
I also don't know if the Ministry would be able to nip it in the bud, because the idea that there could be a time turner out there that existed that wasn't in the Ministry, that maybe the Malfoys dished over a lot of money to buy, very,
I suppose,
easily,
Yeah,
believe.
I suppose that's fair. It's just this is an interesting conversation with Draco and Harry, and I really like Draco coming across as a concerned father.
Especially after Harry just came across as, what do I do with my son? Yeah. Scene changes again.
We now are back on the Hogwarts Express, or we're getting onto the Hogwarts Express as it's about to leave, and there is some distance between Rose and Albus that has developed in the last year.
She says she's only really talking to him around the adults to keep up the pretense that they, get along. Which, again, I don't love this from Rose. I don't love how they've started to raise her. I would think that Ron and Hermione's daughter would be more empathetic than this.
she's still an individual human being, though.
Yeah,
And
I know.
just as Albus is starting to become a little moody and a little, into, not in a selfish way, but into himself and figuring out who he is, Rose is in the same spot. She's trying to figure out who she is and who she wants to be. Mm-hmm. And they happen to be on two opposite ends of that spectrum. So
I totally get not wanting to be around someone who's just like, angsty, emo, life is horrible and everyone's against me. Because that's whiny and annoying after a while. But at the same time, I'm like, geez, girl, it's just being like, I only talk to you because we got to make our parents happy.
I think there is still, even now, 2 decades later, I think there is still a stereotype and a bias against Slytherin.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to assume there's been work done on that relationship, and I'm assuming Slytherin is pumping out less and less
Dark
wizards.
Yeah.
Given the climate. And we've talked about the Voldy years being a particularly bad time for Slytherins, because what are you going to do? But now, with the threat of Voldy not there, presumably, however, I suppose you could have Slytherins that were more anxious to get their hands dirty in that Battle of Hogwarts under Voldy's rule that have had kids. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's still maybe some lingering wisps of history there. So I think they're making strides forward, but I don't know if they've completely shaken the whole Slytherin is evil vibe just yet.
I think Scorpius is starting to shake it because he comes over to greet Albus and Rose, and Rose immediately leaves. And the first thing he says is how she's starting to favor him more by saying, like, oh, she's melting. Again, I don't know if he's just trying to have some dark humor to be like, oh, she hates me and I'm going to pretend otherwise because that's how I cope. Or if it's supposed to be implying that he's got this crush on her or something. But nothing of what we've seen has indicated that Rose feels any way, shape, or form towards Scorpius other than I need to stay clear of him.
Well, we transition scenes again, and this might add some clarity to your question. We go to the Great Hall, and we get our first mention of Professor McGonagall, Headmistress McGonagall, as she announces that Rose has made the Gryffindor Quidditch team, which honestly I feel is a bit odd from the Headmistress announce a Quidditch team.
She was even like,
appointing.
I can't hide my bias. She's superb. Like, okay, McGonagall.
Like, I get McGonagall is a Quidditch fan,
Yeah.
per se, but still a bit odd. But anyway, so McGonagall makes the announcement that Rose has made the Quidditch team.
Albus doesn't clap.
Albus doesn't care. Scorpius begins to clap. And Albus turns to him and is like, 1, we hate Quidditch. 2, she's in a different house. Like, why are you clapping? And that, I think, because she's not even there. Mm-hmm. Unless this is like the only kid at the whole table that is clapping, which probably is the case. Most people, I'm assuming, in the Great Hall from any house, except
Not
for
paying
maybe
attention other than the Gryffindors.
other than Gryffindor, none of the other houses probably care at all about this
Right.
announcement.
I mean, Scorpius said, I'm clapping because she's your cousin.
I take that back. The Quidditch players at the other tables will probably
Yeah,
take
they want
notice.
to know. They want to know.
But they certainly aren't going to applaud it. So I could see Scorpius being literally the only kid outside of a Gryffindor table clapping.
Which does seem to be in line with what we've seen of him so far, is he's kind of got this awkward, like, almost like a Luna-esque kind of vibe to him of like, I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm aware that's a little weird, but I can't stop myself before I do it, so I do it, and then I'm like, ha ha, this is why I did it! I mean, he said he clapped because she's Albus's cousin, but then he said he thinks she's brilliant, which, again,
I am hinting it more towards a crush here.
Right. Which is interesting because I remember when I watched the play thinking that the chemistry between Scorpius and Albus felt stronger than Scorpius towards Rose.
Romantically?
Yeah. I get that it's like they're friends, but the way that it was coming across on the stage, it seemed to come across as more lovingly. I'm not sure.
I mean, you could possibly make that argument. I wouldn't doubt it.
I'm not sure if it was like a director's choice and the one that we saw to really amplify that, or if it was there's stuff in the book that we haven't gotten to yet that I just don't remember because I haven't read it yet. But yeah, it seems weird to think that, oh, he's got this crush on her because she's not giving him any type of time of day.
So we transition again to potions class. And we basically very briefly see that Albus and Scorpius are both being bullied, again, by Polly and Carl. Polly's not coming off very well early in this. We go back to platform 9 3/4, and we get a description of Albus. Now in year 3, Albus's eyes have darkened, his face become more sallow. He's still attractive, but he's unwilling to admit it.
It's like he's starting to fill in more the Severus side of his name than the Albus side of his name.
Maybe a little bit, yeah. Harry is trying to convince himself that everything is fine. Everything's fine. Everything's totally fine. Albus and I are fine. And he gives Albus his Hogsmeade permission.
I like that how he's like, you can sneak some candy from Honeydukes and your mom won't know.
Such a dad moment. Such a dad moment.
Candy fixes everything, right?
Albus, however, says he hates Hogsmeade. And Harry's like, you've never been to Hogsmeade, which also is weird. Why wouldn't they take him to Hogsmeade?
I have no idea. Unless you're trying to save it as a special moment for them. But I had that same comment with the Weasleys.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, why would you not bring these kids to this wizarding town?
It is literal tradition where the kids must first experience it through the magic of Hogwarts, maybe. I don't know. But Albus says he hates Hogsmeade and proceeds to burn the permission slip.
I could see Harry as sending McGonagall a letter just like, look, my kid's stupid. I give him permission to go. Because I know you're a stickler for these permission slips.
Well, Harry might send McGonagall notes, but we know Harry says McGonagall has sent him notes.
Yeah.
McGonagall has been in contact with Harry, saying that Albus is starting to isolate himself, and he's being uncooperative during lessons. And Harry calls him out for it. And Albus responds quite harshly, I think, and kind of lashes out by saying, like, look, I can't magic myself to be popular. I can't transfigure myself into a better student. Like, this is just what I got. And I'm sorry that I'm, such a failure here.
See, this is where I start to buy into the more realistic emo sense that Albus seems to be portraying, because this is very close in age to freshmen, and I teach freshmen now, and I can think of a few right off the top of my head who would act in this way towards their parents or towards their teachers when it's like, I don't understand the subject, I might as well give up, you just think I'm stupid, I can't be this perfect little student, I'm fine getting D's or F's because why even bother? So yes, this feels realistic to me, but again, it does strike me as such, Albus has put himself into this own position. Harry hasn't forced him into it. Harry hasn't given him grief after 3 years of being in Slytherin. It's Albus who has internalized the feeling of I'm a failure for being in Slytherin. And yes, hearing it from other students has probably amplified those feelings, but Harry has not been being like, you're a disappointment to me, Slytherin. He named him after a man from Slytherin.
You know what's catching my attention now? You know what I think is your real issue with this? You're still reading this from Harry's story's perspective.
100%, yeah.
This is not Harry's story anymore.
I know.
This is very clearly Albus's story.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you're having a lot of the issues, is you're still reading it from, I'm reading Harry Potter's version of events.
Yeah, I am.
Not Albus's.
I am, 100%.
I think you're going to have to start
changing
your thought process.
It's hard.
I get that. It is hard.
Now that you mention it, I think I did the same thing when seeing the play, too. I was more interested in seeing the trio as adults than I was really seeing their kids.
That's where not that I wasn't interested. Of course I'm interested in seeing the trio as adults. But I'm very intrigued and interested by an expansion of this universe. Because while at times the Wizarding World does very much revolve around Harry Potter, there are other things going on that are of interest.
Well, I guess that's also why I didn't take to the epilogue as much as everyone else, because I want to see Harry's story. I don't really care as much about his kids' stories. Sorry, but that's my take. I am
perfectly fine with it. So Elizabeth might struggle with the rest of this book.
Sorry, I will, yeah.
But after this awkward scene, let's say, with Harry, Albus ends up joining Scorpius on the train and learns that Scorpius's mother has passed away. So we saw earlier Draco saying, like, hey, look, my wife's not doing very well. Like, he needs support. That
was year 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now we've gotten a progression there of Astoria has passed, and Scorpius seemed to be closer with her than with Draco. Obviously, he mentioned daddy issues before.
Yeah.
And it's interesting now that Draco and Harry, even though we haven't seen very much of Draco's side of this, we've just seen that one interaction, but Harry and Draco seem to be in a very similar situation where they know their son is going through something. They're struggling to be able to connect and to aid them, and they feel bad about it. They're truly being like, I want to help, I just can't figure out the best way to do so.
I do like that the theme of fatherhood has continued from the series into this, because Harry, the vast majority of the series mostly thinks about James and his relationship to James and his comparison to James more so than Lily until the very end. So it's nice to see Harry now in the opposite position of, I'm the father trying to parent my son and deal with fatherhood in that way is a brand new struggle. So I do like that parallel.
We get a very interesting transition.
I don't like this one.
We get a very interesting transition.
Yeah, I don't like this one at all.
We go to the Sorting Hat. Presumably the same year. So Albus's 3rd year.
This is now when
Lily has come to Hogwarts.
Yes.
So the Sorting Hat, in its wisdom, again, opens with a poem or a song or whatever you want to call it. And the Sorting Hat says, "Are you afraid of what you'll hear? Afraid I'll speak the name you fear? Not Slytherin, not Gryffindor, not Hufflepuff, not Ravenclaw. Don't worry, child, I know my job. You'll learn to laugh if first you sob."
Okay, so I get that we're trying to imply that Albus will eventually enjoy the house he has been sorted into.
This is a direct counter to what you said earlier about Albus seems to not like being in Slytherin.
Well, that's what the hat is trying to get us, the audience, to feel, is that Slytherin will be eventually where Albus is supposed to thrive. But to me, it feels really weird for the hat to make any implication that one house is better than the other.
No, I disagree. I disagree on both fronts.
Okay.
I disagree with, one, what your interpretation of the hat is saying.
Okay.
And 2, I disagree that it's different or odd that the hat chooses to say anything on it in the first place. I think it's right in line with what the hat's personality is, if it's weird to say that a hat has personality.
The hat has personality.
But the hat is a little arrogant in itself. It's like, look, I've been doing this a long time, okay? You might not like what I have to say, but guess what? I'm right, okay? Let's just put it there.
Well, I agree with that.
So the second part of this is, you said the hat seems to be saying a house is better than the other. No. A house might be better for you than another. Not necessarily the house is better than another. It might be better for you.
I'll rephrase it then. I think it's odd for the hat to imply that somebody would dislike a house more than the other, because I think
He's heard centuries of people being
I know, but I think every single song that the hat has ever sung has talked about how each house is valuable and has qualities that are worthy and should be like something you're proud of. So
we should also add that most of the songs that we get from the Sorting Hat are usually longer. These are relatively
they're not giving us the breakdown.
They're not giving us the full.
Yeah. So yes, I agree that the hat probably knows some are like, oh, I don't want to be in that house. It just strikes me as odd that the hat would even voice The idea that somebody would see one house as being lesser than another when he knows that all 4 houses are what it takes to make Hogwarts successful.
I don't think the hat is saying that, though. I think it's acknowledging that not every individual is the best fit in a certain house. That's not knocking the house. It's just saying, I think you're a better fit here.
Again, I know that the point is to get Albus, for us, the audience, to be like, yes, we should trust where Albus is. It just seems weird to me. I don't know.
I got a completely different vibe from it. I agree completely that it is clearly the message that the play is trying to tell us. Like, hey, Albus seems to just be hating Slytherin because what Slytherin means to his family name, that'll turn. It'll turn for him. Like, hey, be patient. Everything happens for a reason. This is all part of the grand plan. Whatever. But no, I think the hat here is reiterating the fact that there's a reason you're in the house that you're in. And even if I was thinking one house or another house, there's a reason that you're in the house that you're in. And let's celebrate that. Let's not knock that. And I think it's actually trying to be positive about it, not negative. Also, let's just throw this out there. The hat has been around for centuries. It's got to come up with something to say, Elizabeth. It can't say the same thing every year. It's got to come up with something fresh.
I mean, to be fair, it could say something. It could be cycling the same song every 100 years and nobody would know.
Oh. Conspiracy theories.
Has anyone recorded hat songs? Can we get a book of just the hat songs?
That'd be great. Do you think Albus, through all his time at Hogwarts, which is darn near close to 100 years, has just been like, hey, wait a second.
That sounded familiar to 20 years ago.
In 1924. I caught you finally. He just goes back in his Pensieve, just going through the different...
Wait, let me remember which songs were sung. God,
and then he comes out of the Pensieve and he's like, to the hat in the corner, he's like, do you see that? Same words. Be more original, hat.
Hat conspiracies, I love it.
Anyway, Lily Potter is sorted, and she is sorted into Gryffindor, which Albus's response was, great.
Yeah, way to make it about yourself here, sir.
What? Oh, come on.
No, I totally took it as that. Great.
Yes.
Another, my siblings in Gryffindor. I'm the weirdo in Slytherin.
That is so unfair. If you were the only one in Slytherin and you see another family member go to the opposite side of the Great Hall, yeah, you'd feel like a little... come on.
Well, again, this is where tone plays a big role.
Why does it have to be a negative?
But again, tone. Because if you read it the way you just read it of like, great, then it doesn't read the way I interpret it of great.
So Albus says, great. Scorpius says, Potters don't belong in Slytherin. And Albus responds with, this one does, but I didn't choose to be his son.
Well, he said that too because people were laughing at him. Which, again, I think this is where the visual comes into play. Because if you read it as him just saying it in the side to Scorpius, that is very different from the way I read it, which was people were laughing at him and he was like standing in the middle of the stage yelling at them. I took it more as him lashing out against the people who were laughing at him.
So you're taking it more as an antagonistic approach.
Yes.
I don't think he's antagonistic about it. I think he's forlorn about it. I think he's reflective on it. I think he's more inward thinking about it. I don't think he's as antagonistic as you think he is.
I'm so interested in everyone else's interpretation of this now.
I think you're being far too harsh on Albus for such a young individual who is struggling with a lot of pressure and a lot of self-doubt, that some of which is very much not in his realm of control. We've gotten off to a very interesting start. I think we've discussed this first 4 scenes.
Yeah, we're still in Act 1.
More than we thought we were going to.
100%.
And we have obviously at times read some short snippets very differently. So we are interested to hear what you think about the early aspects of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Let us know if you've seen the actual stage play. Let us know if you've read it. Let us know if this is the first time you're engaging with Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. We want to know all of those thoughts. What do you think of Albus? What do you think of Rose? Now that we're seeing more of them, what do you think of Scorpius? And you can let us know all of these thoughts by either commenting on Spotify or wherever else you're listening to this episode, which might be on YouTube. You can also comment on Blue Sky or Twitter or Instagram. You can find all of our socials at Hogwarts a Pod. We're very excited to continue our journey with Harry Potter. Yeah. So please keep listening. Please keep engaging. And we'll keep pumping out Harry Potter debates. Thank you all for listening. And we will be back with a new episode very shortly. So stay tuned. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.